Hi everyone, it is Kimber, the study abroad specialist here. And in today's video, we are going to be doing the second part of the short series that I started last week, where last week I talked about 3 reasons why you should study abroad. And this week I'm going to be covering the 3 reasons why you should not study abroad. So before we begin, I just want to say that, of course, there are more than 3 reasons why you should study abroad and more than 3 reasons why you should not. But the 3 that I have chosen today really kind of hit on things that I hear from students when, as I said in the previous video, I kind of talk to them and try and figure out specifically, get down to the bottom of why they're interested in studying abroad. Because as I said before, it is a huge commitment time-wise. It's a huge financial commitment for your parents or even for yourself if you're doing some type of scholarship or student loan or something like that. And it really does sort of change who you are as a person in a lot of ways. So I always like to dig a little bit deeper and figure out why students like to do it and why they're interested in doing it. And I would say that the 3 reasons I'm going to mention here are 3 reasons that I've heard over and over again that students want to do it. And I think that these are the top 3 why you should not. So for the first reason why you should not study abroad, you should not study abroad if you're someone who is looking to get away from school. So I've heard this time and time again from students that I have advised, even from friends, when I was a lot younger and I was just embarking on my study abroad journey, and other friends were interested in doing not necessarily the program that I was going to do, but a different program. And they're like, I'm really just kind of tired and want to get away from school, want to get away from campus for a while. I think I want to study abroad. No, that is not a good idea. Something that I've mentioned in a video a while back was that the interesting part about study abroad is that people often hear the word abroad, but they don't hear the word study. And those two work together. That's why it's called study abroad. I mean, study abroad is an amazing opportunity to be able to go to a different country, potentially learn a new language, you get to experience a different culture. You get to, get to travel a lot of times, but it truly is about having to study as well. So depending on what type of program you're doing, and you can go back and look, I've linked it down in the description box where I cover the 3 most common types of study abroad programs. But depending on what type of program you're doing, it may be built directly into the curriculum of your current higher institution of learning, or it may be where you're doing an independent program like I did, or also like I did, you may be doing an entire degree program abroad. So it really depends on what you're doing, but it's not a vacation by any means because it is still school. Now, in many ways, obviously, it's going to be different because you're going to be learning on a new type of curriculum. The grading scale is probably going to be different where you're going. There's going to be sort of like different expectations based on the culture and the way that you participate in class. I talk about this in a blog post where I say that, for example, a lot of times here in the States, when I was at college, you would do where it's just you kind of raise your hand and like the professor asks you a question and then you kind of raise your hand and give that question back to them or give that answer back to them, whatever they're looking for. Whereas when I went to the UK, it was really, most classes were based on discussion, and it didn't matter whether you had a popular viewpoint, an unpopular viewpoint, those viewpoints were welcome, and it was meant to sort of stimulate a lot of discussion and not just kind of answering back and forth. And so depending on where you're going to study abroad, you're probably going to find a lot of that. So you really want to really think about that. So it's not going to be some type of vacation, as I always like to say, where you're just going to be, traveling all the time and drinking Mai Tais and kind of going around seeing the popular sites. You will get to do some of that. But it is an opportunity to study in a different place. And so if you are just looking for an opportunity to get away from campus or to, maybe just get some time off, maybe you want to consider something like a gap year or a gap semester where you just take that time off. And there are lots of different options. I can talk about that in another video, but it's not going to be an opportunity just to kind of get away from school. Study abroad is not that. So if that is what you're looking for, you need to consider something else. So the second reason why you should not study abroad is you definitely shouldn't study abroad if you are a person or a student, particularly who may struggle with adaptation or assimilation. And I say this from a perspective of someone who studied abroad for a short time and then for a longer time for longer degree programs. And obviously, assimilation is kind of on a scale, and we can get into that as well. But I will say that you definitely want to approach study abroad with an open mind. So, no matter where you're going, if you're going to the continent of Africa, if you are going to Australia, if you're coming here to the United States, if you are going to Fiji, it doesn't matter. Wherever you are going and wherever you're coming from, you basically need to leave part of that behind once you get on the plane. And I know that can be very difficult. I mean, trust me, as an American, um, we as a culture, as a society, tend not to assimilate very well. And that was something that I really had to teach myself over time, is that it's going to be a lot easier for you as a study abroad student and a lot easier for you to be able to meet more people, make more friends, and feel a part of the culture if you're willing to assimilate. Now, it doesn't mean that you just leave your entire culture behind when you get on the plane. It doesn't mean that you change who you are, but it means that you are willing to sort of learn more about the new culture that you're going into, sort of leave behind those preconceived notions, because we all have them, unfortunately, and a lot of those stereotypes as well. You want to leave those behind, because if you don't, it's really going to get in your way of having the best semester abroad experience that you could have, or longer, depending on how long you're studying. So if you are a student who feels like you're going to struggle with that, it may not be the right choice for you. And you can even take that on a smaller scale. I mean, I know here in the States, like I was really fortunate that even before I kind of went away to college and did all these things, like I had already moved to a state with an entirely different culture and then had traveled so much. But there are lots of students that their first introduction to a different culture is, particularly here in the States, where people don't tend to, they travel, but it's not the same as like in Europe, where people just, you can hop on a train and go to this place and that place and that place, and you're in a different culture in an hour. It's not like that here. And so, yeah, people do travel here in the States, but a lot of times the first sort of touch point that a student may have with being around people that are different than them, or that may have grown up different than them, or may come from an entirely different part of the country from them, is college. And so that can be quite a culture shock. And that is just within a country where everyone is basically has a lot in common. So you have to think about that. That goes to the next level when you're going out of the country and you're going into an entirely different culture, where a lot of times there may be people that are, within the culture all different. Like you go to a city like London, of course, and it really is just like a microcosm of every different culture you can imagine. And how does someone who is not open-minded deal with that? It can be really difficult. And so I would definitely say that if you feel like you are a student who may struggle with that to the point where you're not going to be able to get over it, and you feel like you're going to be able to go in and make everything the way that your culture is, that is not going to work. It's not very polite, and that's not how it should be. It should be a reciprocal thing, where it's like you're going to be bringing something to the country that you're going to, but you want to get more than what you're bringing. And so if you feel like you're a student that's going to struggle with that, then study abroad might not be for you. So, for the third reason, I decided to leave this one last. I know that it can be very touchy to talk about, because you don't want to necessarily single out any one person's family or their friends or anything. But I would say that the third reason why you should not study abroad is if it is solely based on peer pressure or pressure from family. And I personally just take this really seriously, because I've always been much more of an independent minded person when it comes to my actions. And I did not take the path that either my parents took, or that most of the people in my family took, in terms of like their particular education and where they went to college, and the opportunities they decided to take. I did my own thing, and I was really blessed to have a family that was just very supportive of that and really let me carve my own way. But I know, unfortunately, that is not the case for a lot of students. A lot of students feel obligated, whether it be for cultural reasons, financial reasons, or just maybe they don't know any different, that they have to go, sort of down the line of, well, this is what my parents want me to do, or this is what my friends are doing, so I'm going to do it. And I know that in many aspects, even outside of study abroad, like, it can be hard to sort of break out of that cycle of the peer pressure, of the family pressure, of all of this, just because, your big brother went and studied a semester in Canada. Your parents are like, well, you need to go do this too, or you need to go and, spend a year in China because your sister did it or your cousin did it or whatever. But I would actually push back on that and say that this is the time, particularly if you are a college or grad student. If you're in high school, it's probably still a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit harder for you to maneuver your way, but I think that you can do it, in terms of really thinking about how does this impact your goals. Again, this is something that we talk about a lot on this channel, of how to study abroad and spending time abroad, learning abroad, really impact what you want to do. And if it fits into your life and what your life goals are, and you feel that it's going to be beneficial to you, I think that you definitely should do it. But again, if it's going to tie into the fact of you feel like, well, I need to do this because so and so did it and they went and they had a great time, that's great. But are you planning to follow the exact path that they took? If not, you may want to step back and say, I don't know if this is right for me, particularly if you're on the younger end of things. So by the time you're like in graduate school, you're probably not dealing with as much societal pressure, family pressure, things like that. But I know that high school and college level kids, they deal with this so much. Obviously, not just with study abroad, but when it comes to things like this, where it sounds really exciting and there's a great opportunity involved, a lot of times people think that you should just take it just because someone else did it, and that is absolutely not the case. It doesn't matter, if your mom and dad studied abroad in Italy. If you want to not do that, you should feel confident enough to stick up for yourself. Or if you want to say, like, you did it in Italy and you want me to go to this program in Italy, but I really want to go study abroad in Botswana, feel confident in asserting yourself with that. Because again, every person, every individual, and this sounds really preachy, but every individual has to live their own life. And ultimately, those people, even though you love them, or if they're your best friend, you care about them, like, they will be a part of your life, but they cannot live your life for you. And you don't want to go along making a choice that may not have been right for you. Okay, so that is it for the video. So I will just say in closing that, as I mentioned in the beginning, there are more than three reasons why you should and why you should not. But I think that it's just important to start getting those ideas rolling. As I mentioned before, this is what I do when I advise students. But even if you are just working on your own, you really want to take a step back. And anytime you're making a big decision, whether it be, a personal decision, a life decision, a career decision, you have to think about what is going to be best for you. And you have to, unfortunately, oftentimes just tune out the noise. There's going to be a lot of noise out there. We live in a noisy world. It's like you can, turn on your phone, there's noise. You get on social media, that is nothing but noise. TV is noise, all of it is noise. And you have to be able to step back from the noise and figure out, who am I as a person? What am I trying to accomplish? What are my sort of life goals and what I'm trying to achieve? And that is going to lead you down the right path. And I am hoping for you that study abroad is in that path. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen right away. It could be that you don't end up studying abroad until you're, maybe in your senior year of college, or maybe you don't get to do it until you're sometime in grad school. It happens for people at different times. But I just want you to definitely think about that, since it is such a huge investment, both personally and mentally, emotionally, and of course, financially. So if you've enjoyed this video, please go ahead and hit the like button. As I said before, please share this video with other students who you know that may be interested in studying abroad. We really want to continue building on our community here, and I'm so excited to continue bringing these videos to you. And I will see you next Friday for the next one.